welcome back to the Graeme and Sophia podcast.
Yeehaw.
We just watched the
Hungarian
Hungarian
Grand
Grand Prix.
I know Charles didn't win that one
Yes, he did not win.
because he wasn't drinking water. The patience of this man is really getting tested, but
Yeah.
I don't
It
know
did
how
sound
he
like
didn't
he was
pass
getting a
out.
little bit angry,
I
which
think
is
it's
not
deserved.
very Charles.
I think he has a lot of patience, but I think if I was in his position, I would have snapped probably like 4 races ago.
Not
Last
last
year.
year. Yeah.
No, 4 races ago last year.
All right.
But yeah.
Well, let's get into the race results. We had Max P1, Lando P2, Checo P3, Lewis P4, Oscar P5, George P6, Charles P7, Carlos P8, Alonso P9, and Lance P10. That's all the points positions. You know, it's funny. There was a point during the race where it was Red Bull in first and second, McLaren in third and fourth, Mercedes in fifth and sixth, Ferrari in seventh and eighth, and then both the Aston Martins in ninth and 10th. And I don't think I've ever actually seen that happen before.
I know. They called it out too, and I was like, "Wow, that's such an aesthetically pleasing grid."
It really was. I was gonna take a picture of it, and then I was watching my phone for that part of it. So whenever you screenshot from like the phone stream, it just shows up as a black screenshot, so I wasn't able to.
Oh, they're gatekeeping.
Clearly, but it was cool. It was very aesthetic.
I'm sure someone has a picture of it somewhere.
Yeah,
and if not,
it did also only last for like 2 laps because it was like in the middle of like pit stops and stuff. But it was cool.
It was cool. I would love for the arrangement of it, the order, to be different, but it's fine.
Yeah, you know, I'm pretty happy with it. So
of course you are.
no complaints on my end.
You wouldn't put Red Bull in the back?
I think. I mean, I would just get rid of Red Bull completely. I mean, that would be pretty nice. But
okay.
For what it was, I'm happy with the result.
I think we should put Max in like a Haas car or the Williams car and see what happens.
He would just he's really good, but if you put any driver, even the best driver in the world, in a shitty car, they can only do so much.
That's true.
But I bet if you put Mazepin in Max's car, he would probably win a race.
Shots fired.
Maybe not every single race like Max has done, but he would probably win
at least
race.
One.
Yeah.
It's just a singular race in the best car ever.
Yeah. Best car in F1's entire history now, basically.
Yeah, literally. And
Mazepin
you only have hope that he would win one.
Yeah.
Perfect. I'll let him know you said that.
Yeah, you got him on speed dial?
Yeah. Mazepin.
So what would you rate the race?
I would give it a solid 4.5. I think, it was pretty exciting in the beginning. There were some twists and turns, but overall it wasn't one of the best races this season, I would say.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of on the same boat. I gave it a 5. I think that the issue was that after qualifying, everyone had such high hopes that maybe like Lewis would be able to hold off Max and then there'd be some drama and something would happen. But Max just got first place immediately after turn 1. And any hope of an exciting race and won by 30 seconds. So any hope of a good race was kind of gone after that. And I mean, after the last 2 races we had, I would take a 5. They can't all be bangers, you know?
Agreed. I guess we're getting greedy, but I mean, there was some excitement. I would say it wasn't the most boring race of the season.
Yeah. Everything behind Max was kind of exciting, as it usually is.
Story of this year.
So I think we should do a quick constructors standings update. So right now, Red Bull has 452 points. So they're like 230 points clear of second place Mercedes at 223. And then
Okay.
you have Aston Martin in third at 184, Ferrari in fourth at 167, McLaren in fifth at 87, Alpine in sixth at 47, Williams and Haas, seventh and eighth, both have 11 points. Alfa Romeo has nine, and then AlphaTauri has two.
Oh, perfect.
You know what's crazy now? Because there's like a top five, like well, there's Red Bull, and then there's a top four behind them. Like
Yeah,
Alpine, Williams, Haas, Alfa Romeo, AlphaTauri are like barely going to get points, I think, for the rest of the season.
I agree. I think it's going to be really difficult for them, but I think the top 4 or 5, whatever you want to count, besides Red Bull, I think it's going to shift a lot. I really do think it's going to be a lot more of a nail biter than we probably expected earlier this year.
Yeah, I mean, at the beginning of the season, we thought Aston Martin was going to clearly be the second best team and maybe even eventually fight Red Bull, but they've just kind of dropped off the last 4 or 5 races. I guess since Canada, which is the last time Alonso was on the podium.
Yeah, and we kind of talked about this last episode, like what's going on with Aston Martin. And I know you mentioned that their car typically does better on, the track similar to the Hungarian one. And
Hmm.
my
It
expectations were
didn't
high.
happen.
It didn't
Yeah.
happen. So I think it's kind of like bittersweet because we were also waiting to see how the McLaren would do.
Hmm.
And that was a pleasant surprise.
Yes, it was. I think something I'm going to be talking about later today is kind of going to give us a little bit more insight on what happened with Aston Martin and McLaren and basically like everyone besides Red Bull. Um, but definitely
You'll always know what I want to hear.
a lot of interesting developments in everyone besides Red Bull. Even Red Bull actually brought an upgrade this weekend that was supposed to give them 2/10, which is crazy. That I honestly
They
thought that
needed
they were just going to be yeah they really need the extra 2/10.
that.
Um,
I actually
I
had a
really thought that they were
dream.
going to be done upgrading for the year and just focus on 2024, but apparently not.
I actually had a dream, which is really weird that I had this dream, but I had a dream that the upgrades actually made the Red Bull not be able to even start.
Well,
um,
it's good to know
and
that you're dreaming about F1.
I know that's so embarrassing. Someone get me a life. Going off of the standings, Red Bull got their 12th consecutive win, which is or it broke McLaren's record. So I think that was pretty exciting for them and the team. And then, of course, Max gets his 7th consecutive win. Um,
Yeah, it's it's truly like insane how good they are this year compared to everyone else. Like
yeah,
the fact that that record has stood for 30 years despite periods of both, oh, not both, Ferrari, Red Bull, and Mercedes have all had like periods of dominance in the past like 30 years,
yep.
and McLaren still held that record until now. I think that
Yeah,
just goes to
it's
show how good Red Bull are, and kind of I don't know if I want to say everyone else dropped the ball, but I think really Red Bull just nailed it this year.
agreed. And I think obviously we're all a little bitter that it's just this dominance going on, but I think we have to take a step back and really appreciate that a lot of
Yeah.
hard work goes into it. As much as we want to hate Max, and Red Bull, it's you got to give them kudos as well. So
Yeah.
they
You gotta give
actually,
them this year, and hopefully next year it's more exciting. Like let them have their year, and then that's it. Let's have some good seasons, hopefully, following this.
yeah, Max can be 3-time world champion. Um,
Yep.
rumor is he could be world champion as early as the Singapore Grand Prix. So
Yep.
coming up,
If he wins every race and gets all like the sprint wins, fastest laps, Singapore is the earliest that he can win. Which wouldn't be a record because they used to run much shorter seasons. So
yeah,
I think they were saying on the broadcast that Michael Schumacher won this weekend for one of his first championships, but they ran a much shorter season. So
that makes sense.
it's
That adds up.
yeah. I think for like modern F1, it would probably be one of the earliest wins for a drivers' championship, though.
Yeah. Well, good for him. We all knew this was coming, so
Yeah. Here's a question:
can't
do
wait.
you think anyone will beat a Red Bull for a win this season?
I think the only way that it would happen is like Max has to crash and into Checo. I think they both have to crash or explode, or like both of them have engine failures. I just don't think without a freak occurrence that it would happen. No
That's
way.
kind of what I was thinking until so I was watching Sky F1 post race and they were talking to Zach Brown and he said something which makes sense now that I think about it, but I didn't really realize it. But like everyone talks about like, oh, when are you gonna stop working on this year's car and start working on next year's car? Like Red Bull, like I said, they're not bringing any more upgrades besides like track specific
Right.
stuff for this year, and they're just working on 2024. But Zach Brown said that there's not really any changes for the regulations for 2024. So any work you're doing on this car will apply to next year. And he said McLaren
Interesting.
is working on another big upgrade for later this season. And then also Lando in a post race interview said like, yeah, we're really happy like P2. And I guess someone asked him like, oh, when's the win coming? And he said, we have some big stuff coming later this year. So like, I don't know what the actual technical balance is. Like, why is Red Bull kind of not bringing stuff to this car unless they're changing? Unless they're, my theory is that they're changing their concept,
Yeah.
and that's why they're not. But it is good to
Or
hear that other teams are still working on this year.
yeah, I mean, I think it's hard to tell, right? It's how good are these upgrades going to be as well is a big question. Like
Yeah.
obviously McLaren's last upgrade was great, phenomenal, and we saw those results, but I mean, do you think that it could really push them to beat Max? I don't know. I feel
I
like
mean, realistically, like we can see in like qualifying was great. Obviously, Lewis got pole by 3,000th of a second. Lando was within a tenth of pole, and he thinks that he could have got it if he had a cleaner lap. Um, so qualifying is good. I think that everyone like knows that the Red Bull race pace is really good, but the real
yeah.
reason it's so good is because they don't have tire deg or like really they have
Yeah.
really low tire deg. So if other teams can kind of like figure that
Figure it out.
out, then they can at least get closer. Um, it's like on one lap pace, they're not that far off these teams,
No, true.
which is good. I think it's just
I
every
also
every
think
team has a lot of the teams have tire deg problems, which is like the
right.
biggest thing that Red Bull has an advantage on.
I mean, I also don't think they'd be saying those statements if they didn't really know what was coming
Yeah,
either. So I feel like they must be pretty confident in those upgrades for
yeah,
them to even make a formal statement about that as well. So we'll see. I
yeah.
mean, I would love to see someone else win.
I think if like I know that Mercedes has already said that they're working pretty heavily on next year's car, but sounds like McLaren and like Ferrari might be working on this year's car as well. But yeah, I think by the end of the season we might see someone else win besides Red Bull. But if Red Bull
Oh,
does go the entire season with winning every race, that would be absolutely insane.
that would be a
Like
record,
that
right?
record will 100% never be beat. Like
No, because
what would
I
be
think
23 consecutive wins?
I think the best was McLaren winning 15 out of 16.
Yeah, I think so. But I guess just
So
because we have more races now,
yeah,
you'd have to. I guess you'd
exactly.
have to go by like percentage to actually get a real comparison. But
I don't
it's kind of
know. I
hard.
feel
It's
like
hard to compare to like old seasons where they just had less
yeah.
races.
Well, we'll see. We'll keep our fingers crossed and
Yeah,
hope that it happens, but we won't hold our breath because we
yeah.
might die.
So another thing that we should talk about with the constructors is McLaren gonna catch Ferrari, Aston Martin, or Mercedes. So in the last three races, Lando's gotten 48 points and Oscar's gotten 22 points. Ferrari as a team has gotten 39 and Aston as a team has gotten 21. At this rate, it will be like if this rate continues, it'll be like six more races until they catch one of them, I think.
I think the chances of it are likely, to be honest. Especially, I think
Yeah.
Ferrari is probably.
Well,
I
Ferrari
don't
is
know the
still
way.
faster than Aston.
Their pace isn't there, and their strategy is literally ass backwards. Everything
Yeah,
you shouldn't do, they do.
it's weird because Aston is third in the constructors and Ferrari's fourth, but I think currently Aston is slower than Ferrari. So it could like they could also switch places
That's
before
true.
McLaren catches one of them. Um,
I think they're
and
going
yeah,
to
it's
shift.
yeah.
I would love to see Ferrari beat Aston. I see the fly and I see your attention going with it.
It's goddamn.
I would love to see that. And it could happen because I feel like Aston has been kind of falling off the grid a little bit and not performing as well. But I just think
Hmm.
Ferrari's fuck ups are really just accumulating.
Yeah, it's kind of like it seems like it's kind of getting to a point where something is going to happen. Like my prediction for this race was that Carlos and Charles are going to like damage each other. I feel like it's gonna. I feel like at some point this season it's going to happen.
I would be shocked if it didn't. Like
And also,
at this
even
point,
recently, I feel like Carlos has been getting like kind of in his head like that he's faster than Charles.
yeah, I definitely think that there's a lot of tension growing between the two, just from like the radios and the strategy and everything. You can just tell Carlos is getting frustrated, and he has been for a while because he is ahead of Charles,
Yeah,
but they're still prioritizing Charles. So I get it. I don't think they would intentionally sabotage themselves, but
I mean, it definitely wouldn't be intentional, but I think that tempers will boil over, and we might see some of that on track.
I hope it's at Austin where we can see it live.
Yeah, I mean that is close to the end of the season, so maybe that's where we'll see some new race winner.
There better be.
My hope is that like McLaren catches Aston and Ferrari and then just like doesn't do whatever the last races are, cuz I think that they do have the second fastest car at least the last like two races, and they look to be strong on all tracks based on this and the last couple. My hope is that they get up to the point where like they know that they could get those positions and then they stop, because if they get fourth versus like, or if they get fifth versus third or fourth, they get way more wind tunnel time for next season. And my hope is that they just like play the smart game, like take the hit on like the prize money and just like get the better development time, so that way 2024 they can have like a crazy good car.
I don't know if they would
I
do
don't
that.
see. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think they would. I feel like that's kind of like against what
The
like all these
rules.
teams. No, not against the rules, but I feel like that's against what all these teams like strive to do. They want to do as well as they can, but
Right.
like Aston Martin was able to make this big of a jump because they finished
Yeah,
eighth last year and had like
right.
almost double the wind tunnel time as Red Bull.
I just don't think Google Chrome would approve of that strategy.
Yeah, Google Chrome might drop them as a sponsor if they finish fifth.
And then they can't do their Chrome livery anymore.
Yeah, which would
Or
be a
have the
damn
Chrome
shame.
tires.
The Chrome
Yeah,
tires are sick. I love those. I'm a big fan.
they're pretty cool. They're pretty cool.
I don't think
I'll give
anyone
it
else on the
that.
grid has a cooler one.
No. How much do you think that costs just to get like the Chrome logo?
Well, Chrome pays them. They don't pay
Right.
Chrome.
I know, but how much do you think that costs?
Oh, I don't. Probably. I think they're not. Well, they're not like a. I guess they are a title sponsor because it's also on like their side pod or
Yeah.
part of it on like the engine cover. So probably like 20 million. I don't know.
Next episode,
Less.
let's look into sponsors and how much money they
Yeah,
pay.
have a
I'm
sponsor
curious.
segment.
Yeah, let's do that. I'm curious. I need to learn. 'Cause
I
that's
like that.
insane.
I would. That would be cool to find out how much these teams actually get from sponsors.
And then you can see how much it helps
Yeah.
and how much it costs and how much money goes into this sport.
All
All right, so
right.
moving on to predictions review. We'll start off with yours. I'll go through them. So you predicted Max wins the race. No brainer.
Yes.
Wow.
Got it right.
Crazy prediction. You had Alonso P2. You had Lando P3.
Yeah.
And honestly, if we had just combined our predictions,
I was gonna say between the two of us, we had the podium.
we had the podium. We just weren't thinking together. I wasn't sure whether I put Checo P2 or P3.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, oh wow, I got it, but I didn't. Anyway, so close. If you had just moved Lando up, you would have
Yeah,
gotten another point.
it's all right. I'll take a point. The
And your
freebie.
crazy, yeah, the freebie, which shouldn't count anymore, but it's fine.
He's the free space on a bingo board.
Yeah. And then your crazy prediction was Carlos and Charles crash damage, and luckily it didn't happen.
I think I should just use that as my crazy prediction for every single race because it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen eventually.
It probably will. It probably will. Yeah.
All right. So 1 point for me. Let's move on to your predictions. Big surprise here. Max P1. So you got a point there. You had Checo P2. So you were close. Like we said, if we combined, we would have had them just not in the right order. You had Hamilton P3.
Close.
And then your crazy prediction, which I wasn't really happy with, but I let you do it, was that Checo would get to Q3, and he did.
Barely. P9.
Well, no. He got. I think he was like 5th or 6th in Q2, so he made it to Q3 easily. But he got 9th.
What I'm saying,
overall.
like, yeah. And honestly, it was a crazy prediction because we saw him crash in FP1. So
that's true. I really thought the nerves were getting. I think the nerves are getting to him a little bit from the Daniel Ricciardo pressure.
Yeah. I will say though, he did a great job climbing the grid. Great comeback for him, but if he just did better, he wouldn't have to work that hard.
Yeah. If only.
He could have taken probably P2. I think if he had a better start, he would have easily.
Oh yeah. I mean, he finished, I think, like 4 seconds behind Lando. So like, if he probably lost
a few laps.
Yeah, he probably lost. I don't know, like 10 seconds from starting P9 or something. Like I think if he started 5th, even he would have easily been 2nd.
Yeah. So he's just making it harder for himself, but it's fine.
Yeah, it's all fine. No problems there.
That's 2 points for me, though, and I think that puts me ahead.
Yep, so I have 4 points and you have 5 points. So you are up by 1 point right now.
That's crazy.
Crazy stuff.
Feel like a winner.
All right. So what was your moment of the race?
So it was after the race, but obviously what's been trending all over social media was Lando breaking Max's trophy by popping the champagne on the little podium stand.
Yep.
And I don't know if you know this, but that trophy cost $45,000 to make.
I did see that, and it also takes 6 months to make.
Yeah. Crazy, but
they are insured, though, so Lando's in the clear.
Perfect.
Yeah.
It's the way that he popped the champagne, saw it drop, and just continued on.
Yeah.
And then after was like, oh, shit.
No fucks given. And then in the pen, he was like, oh, I think it was Max's fault because he put it too close to the edge. Like, jokingly.
Such a gaslighter. Lando's so funny. But the reason why it was my favorite part too was just seeing all the like memes and the teams in on it. Like Red Bull literally posted like at Lando Norris ... Like Max posted it too. So it was just really nice to see the like camaraderie between everyone and like.
And then in the when McLaren was doing their team photo with the P2 trophy, Zach Brown picked up the P2 trophy and pretended to smash it in front of Lando and Oscar. And there's like a screenshot from when he's doing it, and Oscar and Lando are just looking at each other, and they're like they actually thought he was going to do it for a second.
It was so funny, but also, I mean, how many trophies does Max have?
Yeah, he doesn't need that extra, he's at 44, so maybe Lando did it on purpose so that he would have 43, and then when he gets the next one, he'll be at 45. Because he doesn't, Max did say he doesn't want to be on the same number, 44, the same as Lewis Hamilton's number.
Well, he did him a favor.
Yeah, it was just two friends just helping each other out. That's just how it goes.
They are friends, and one thing to note at this point is just, like in the post-race interviews, you really do see their friendship come through. Like Max is always defending Lando, and you could just see that friendship a little bit deeper as well. You can see that Max is like really proud of him, I think. And
Yeah.
I have to admit here, this is where we're diving a little bit deeper into Max for 2 seconds. I used to obviously not really like Max. I thought he was just like a dick. Like he took risky like risks
A
all the
little too
time and like
aggressive.
super aggressive. And then you find out a little bit more about his history and his personal life with like his dad. And then you suddenly have a soft spot for him and you feel for him that like he's just really trying to impress the people in his life. And it like humanized him a little bit more for me. And I think I was able to appreciate him a little bit more than maybe like a year ago or so. So I think also just seeing his relationship with Charles and Lando, it kind of just helps paint that picture a little bit better as well.
Yeah. It's kind of funny because I had like the same thought process with Lewis. Like when I first started watching, I was like, oh, Lewis is winning all the races. He's won 6, like, yeah, I guess 7 of that. Well, no, I guess, yeah, at the point I started watching, I think it was 6 world championships. Yeah. And I was just like, this guy sucks. Like, I hate that he's such a winner. But now that he's not as much of a winner, and like, I know I found out like more about him, and like, you know, I've definitely grown to like him more than I did when I first started watching the sport, and have more of an appreciation for him. He is, yeah, definitely, and he went through a lot of stuff when he was younger.
Yeah, I know some people watch F1 for the race, the sport of it all. I'm definitely one that does appreciate the personal lives of people, just their backgrounds, how they got there. Because I think it's lost and forgotten. You know, you get so angry at someone like, oh, you had a shitty race. Like, fuck you, you're so stupid. But it's also like, have you ever done that? Do you know how hard that is? I don't know. I think it just makes me enjoy the sport a little bit more, and it makes you like feel a little bit more connected.
Yeah, I agree. If you're involved, like slightly more involved in like, you know, like the drivers behind the wheels a little bit better, I think it definitely makes you more interested in how they do, and you know, the competition itself, for sure.
And sympathetic.
Yep. Yeah, maybe. Definitely.
Yeah, that's just
because they're, I mean, they've all, you know, there's hundreds of like F2, F3, and like younger like series drivers, and only 20 of them get to go to F1 at a per season. Like they all have gone through a lot to get there.
I know.
Besides maybe Lance Stroll.
Please. Thank you, Daddy. So, what I was gonna say though is like when you explain F1 to people that aren't familiar with it at all, you're like, you know, the NFL. There's, I don't know how many teams. I don't care, but on those teams, there's also how many players. Like it's just an insane amount. Like the population's huge. When you think of F1, it's 20 of the world's best drivers.
It's so selective.
So selective, and it makes it more impressive. And like even if you're not performing well in F1, which we'll get to that too, it's still an accomplishment, and it's still impressive because you were at some point, you know, selected for that, and you know, different circumstances call for different reasonings, but super impressive.
Yeah, definitely.
So what was your gosh, that was long. What was your moment of the race?
So my moment of the race was at the first round of pit stops. Lando was P3, Oscar was P2, and Lewis was P4. I think it was like 2 or 3 seconds between each of them, so they were all pretty close. Yep. Hamilton pit first, and then McLaren went to pit Lando to try to cover Lewis's, because Lando was more at risk than Oscar was because of the gap. And so Lando pits, comes out in front, and then has the greatest outlap of all time.
Yeah.
Like, I looked at the timing. Lewis's outlap was a 1:44. Lando's was a 1:40. So 4 seconds faster on Lando's outlap.
Crazy.
They pit Oscar, and right as Oscar's coming out of the pit lane, Lando just gets around him.
Mm-hmm.
And like, thank God he did. He said it in the post race, one of the post race interviews or something. But if he didn't, well, first of all, if they didn't get past Lewis to start, and then second of all, if he got stuck behind Oscar, Lewis probably would have gotten on the podium instead of Lando.
Yeah.
So, and then part of this is like the next lap after they've all pit. I guess Lewis asked what the gap was to the McLarens, and he got told that it was 10 seconds. And he's like, how the hell did they get 10 seconds on us in like 2 laps?
Yeah.
And he was like so shocked.
I think we all were.
Yeah, it was really impressive. I think they, kind of one of McLaren's weaknesses still, despite this upgrade, is that they still do have bad tire deg in like hot temperatures.
Yeah.
So they got their tires up quickly, so they were able to have really good outlaps and build that gap. Lewis at the end of the race only finished, I think, 2 seconds off of Checo, so 6 seconds off of Lando. So he definitely pulled some of that gap back as the McLaren's tires went off and his tires were still okay. But yeah, that whole like exchange of like all the pits, that was probably like one of the most exciting parts of the race.
Yeah, unfortunate race for Lewis, P1 and P4, but
yeah,
we all had hopes. Hopes.
Toto, I think, said that he thought they had the second fastest car in that race. And I think averaging out their race pace, I think Lewis and Lando had the exact same race pace. It really was that start where he lost those positions that basically cost him the podium.
Wow.
And
That's
cost
tough.
you an extra point, I guess, for your predictions too. Because
I
think if Lewis had ended up, well, I don't know if Checo would have been able to get him, but maybe Lewis would have been on the podium and you could have gotten an extra point there.
It's fine. I prefer the podium how it was. Oops.
Yeah, I do too. I'm plenty happy with Lando P2. It's first time in his career that he's had back-to-back podiums.
Yeah, I saw that. I was so happy for him. I feel he also, like I said, he's probably my second favorite driver. So
yeah, this is the first time in his career that he's actually had a car that seems like it can fight for podiums every week, which is incredible. And it's crazy where like just where they started is just mind-boggling that this is where they are now.
You would think it's like a whole different season, and you can also see his confidence just skyrocketed in himself and his driving.
He's got a little bit of swagger on him now.
As he should.
He's always been like quietly confident and like qualifying stuff, and he's like, "Oh, we did good qualifying, but the race is gonna be shit." But he's actually having like, I think we can maybe hold on to the podium position, and like it's just good to see. Glad he's finally getting a car that's good enough for him.
If Ferrari's shitting the bed, I hope Lando's at least, trekking ahead.
So at least for you, if Ferrari does the Ferrari thing and Lando does well, you can say it was an okay weekend for you.
It was an okay weekend for me. But I feel like that's like a good transition into some of the race controversy.
Yeah. Despite not being the most exciting race, I think there was a lot of just stuff that happened that's definitely worth talking about.
Yeah, and I think that transition with Ferrari, obviously, not a great weekend for them. I think Charles literally got kicked while he was down, maybe like 4 or 5 times.
Yeah, they really were beating him while he was dead on the ground.
Not only did he not have water the entire race, which you heard all the drivers saying that it was like one of the hottest races of the year so far. And like, I just can't imagine not being able to have water in those like very hot, tiring conditions.
Must have been like so dehydrated.
He still like cracked a smile in one of the post-race interviews, and I was like, oh, like he's so resilient.
Good job, Charles.
Like, hold it together. That pit stop for him, what was it, 9 seconds?
Yeah, 9.3.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
What the fuck? And then And then he tries to speed it up a little bit in the pit lane and gets a 5-second penalty.
Yeah, it was just insult to injury. I think he was like 1 kilometer per hour over the speed limit
Yeah,
entering the pit lane, and yeah, that cost him the a position to George.
literally,
Well,
like,
that and the pit stop cost him
well,
position to George. Yeah, he realistically
yeah,
he probably would have gotten Oscar, I think, if he didn't have that problem, because Oscar's pace at the end was terrible.
yeah, but I mean, a lot of would haves put it into that scenario.
Yeah, if only he
I
didn't
don't.
drive for Ferrari.
Yeah, if he had a different car, maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was one controversy of this past race. It really sucks. Tough season for us out here, but expected.
Yep. Another kind of controversial thing was usually when there's two drivers that are back to back, they'll give the driver in front the
Yep.
better, pit strategy. And obviously for McLaren, they decided to pit Lando, who was behind Oscar, and that allowed Lando to get in front, which thankfully they did. I don't think that they were
Right.
predicting that Oscar's pace would drop off that bad because he got a little bit of damage and had bad tire management. But I'm sure Oscar probably was not happy to come out of the pits and see Lando flying past him. Um, but
He didn't
the
say
interesting
anything.
thing is in Silverstone, when Lando was in front in P2 and Oscar was in P3, they pit Oscar first. So
Yeah.
I really but no one talked about it then because Oscar got screwed by the safety car. But if he
Yep.
hadn't, if the safety car hadn't come out and Lando had pit, Oscar would have gotten past Lando. So I think it's
Yeah.
just kind of how McLaren chooses to do stuff. I guess they take the driver that's more at risk from someone else undercutting them, and then they do the front driver later. So I think it was made to be a big deal, but it really wasn't.
Yeah. I remember them talking about it on the stream. They're like, "Oh, like Oscar's probably pissed," and then they're like, "Well, nothing's come through his radio. Like he hasn't said anything." And I was like,
Yeah,
I wonder if they're just like they're trying to stir the pot.
they definitely are. I mean, that's they're entertainers first. I think that's
Right.
definitely what they're trying to do.
They're drama starters.
Yeah, they are. They
Well,
literally any little thing, like even the team radio, the ones that they show on the broadcasts are all the ones that are gonna like stir up drama and stuff.
yeah. It's so great. It's like reality television.
Yeah, reality TV while going at 200 miles per hour.
Perfect. Sounds literally ideal. No pressure. Also, one side note comment, if I was driving at those speeds, racing people, I don't know how they talk in the radios. If someone tried to talk to me while I was doing that, I would be like, please shut up and don't ever talk to me. And I'd be like, I can't respond to you.
Yeah, a lot of
So,
times the drivers will like tell teams like do not talk to me in the middle of a corner. Like they try to talk only on the straights, but with Hungary there's only the one straight, so they kind of
yeah.
just have the drivers just kind of have to deal with it.
And they always, not always, but for the most part, sound so cool, calm, and collected. Like they're just sitting on the couch. They're like, yeah,
Unless you're Yuki,
Cloppy. Well, right.
where he just
He's
tells
person.
his race energy and
Fuck off.
engineer to just shut the fuck up, and he's
That
just
would be
like,
me,
oh
though.
yeah.
Amazing. But yeah, sorry,
And
that
it's
kind
funny
of
we
went
have
into
like opposite end where like Oscar, like the most calm person on the radios. Like they when Checo got past him, they asked him like, "Oh, did Checo push you off?" He's like, "Yeah, he didn't leave me that much room." And it was like
Yeah,
completely so calm.
I know. That was so wholesome. He's so wholesome.
Yeah.
You just gotta.
Everyone says that he's like very mature for only being like 23, and this is being his first season in F1 as well.
Yeah, I think, I mean, he's a little bit, like, you could tell he's a rookie, just in
Yeah.
the sense of, like, I don't know, but he is very mature. He's very cool, calm, collected. You don't see him stirring the pot.
No, he's not the type. He's there to drive and that's it.
Yeah. But I do think his personality is coming out more and more. He's getting more comfortable, I think.
Yeah. And
I
like
do
some of the
blame this
videos
whole
that
thing.
McLaren does with him and Lando, he seems to
Yeah,
be like laughing a little bit more and like opening up a little bit
yeah,
more. Um,
which is
I
great to
think
see.
I think Lando being friendly definitely is helping as well.
It's like Lando's now the big brother, where he used to be
Yeah,
the little
yeah,
brother.
yeah. He's
Rules have
he's
changed.
transitioning into leader of the team,
Woo.
which I guess he kind of was when DR was there, but that's we'll not talk about that. Everyone wants to
For the
forget DR McLaren. One more race controversy that I want to talk about. There have been reports recently that 3 teams may have breached the cost cap for 2022. So we saw what happened with Red Bull. They had a fine and then I think like a 5% reduction in their wind tunnel time. Um, the report that I saw was from a French outlet, said it was Mercedes, Red Bull, and Aston Martin were the 3 teams. But no one, like a lot of people aren't naming the teams because so I think it's very up in the air which teams it are. If teams have breached the cost cap, they're going to be even more harsh than they were at Red Bull because they've seen that clearly it didn't really do much to Red Bull.
Agreed. I think they'll probably come down harder, but curious to see who the teams actually are.
Yeah.
Who actually breached it and what happens.
Yeah, so there are 2 specific things related to like why teams might have breached it. One is that there's some like loophole where if you're developing like a supercar, you can like somehow use the development of that car and give it back to F1 without factoring the cost. So Aston Martin and Red Bull are both working on a supercar, and people have been saying that they might have been kind of using development from that to influence their F1 cars. So that's a no-no if they are found out to have been doing that. The other one is that Helmut Marko, apparently his salary doesn't come out of the Red Bull cost cap, and he's like technically not part of the management structure, but he's at every single race, and he's clearly part of the management structure for both Red Bull and AlphaTauri. So his salary not being included might put them over the cost cap as well.
Oh shit.
Yeah, so I think by the end of August or like something like that, we'll find out which teams they are. But it's going to be interesting to follow along and see what happens with that.
Yeah, I'm curious to see. Huh. Didn't know that. Thanks for letting me know.
Yeah, definitely something to keep an eye on because, like I said, I think whoever is found to breach it for 2022 is going to get a way harsher penalty than Red Bull did.
Hopefully it's Red Bull. Sorry, what?
I didn't hear anything.
Wasn't me. Anyway, moving on from that, me stirring the pot. Stats and nerdy shit with Graeme.
Yeah, so this week we got a cool one. F1 does this. I don't think they do it every race weekend, but like multiple times through the season, they'll show during FP1 this 2023 or like whatever year car development. So in this graph, Red Bull you can see is the fastest, and then it has every team's like I think this is based on qualifying. So Ferrari is the second fastest in qualifying, then Mercedes, then McLaren, Alpine, Aston Martin, Williams, Haas, AlphaTauri, Alfa Romeo, and it shows basically where teams started for like their deficit to Red Bull and how they've gotten closer to Red Bull. I think obviously the big one here is that 0.78 seconds of improvement from McLaren, which is like crazy. The other 2 notable ones, Williams. We saw that they had that big update. I think it was in Canada, and then they were really good in Silverstone, and they like look to be at like the top of that like back. They're not really back markers. They're all midfielders now, but they're kind of not in the top, but they're kind of close to Alpine now. Is what it seemed like recently. The other thing is that Aston Martin has lost time relative to Red Bull.
Yeah, I was going to ask that. And Haas.
But I think Aston Martin is the more like shocking one considering where they started. And I think that's part of the reason why, we're seeing them not do as well is that technically, like if no one had done developments from the start of the year, Aston Martin would have been good here. But the fact is that every other team has been improving and they relative to Red Bull, whereas they haven't been. So other teams are getting closer to Aston Martin and overtaking Aston Martin. So it's just making Aston look worse. So I think that whatever I know that they had a big upgrade package, I don't know, like 4 or 5 races ago, but whatever it was, it didn't seem to really work or give them much pace in general. The other thing is that they have Alpine at the same qualifying gap as Aston Martin. So who knows? Maybe even Alpine at some point this season will jump into this next group,
Hmm.
like top cars, and then we'll have 6 teams fighting for the top 10 places, like all like pretty close except for Red Bull. But um,
Yeah,
yeah,
if they don't double DNF again.
yeah, I think that's
It
actually
wasn't their fault.
insane. Two races in a row of double DNFs is absolutely brutal.
It really wasn't their fault.
It wasn't their fault at all. Just Guan Yu Zhou decided to go bowling. He pulled I mean, Bottas is his teammate, so Bottas probably taught
He
him,
taught him.
yeah, he said, watch my film from 2021, and
Do as
and
I do.
yes, yep, and Zhou took it to heart, and
He did it.
he hit Daniel Ricciardo
Hmm.
into Ocon into Gasly.
Yep.
And then both the Alpines retired, and somehow DR was fine, and he didn't have damage and was able to keep going, thankfully, because that would have been a pretty miserable first race back to just get out on lap one.
Yeah, but I mean, Daniel Ricciardo did great for his first race back.
He did. He outqualified Yuki.
Yeah.
They both had new front wings for this race, and Yuki damaged his in FP1.
Perfect.
So that's just worth noting. But still, DR did outqualify Yuki, which Nick DeVries did not do the entire season.
Yeah.
So that's something. And then, despite the damage, or not the damage, the impact on lap one, him having to box for a new wing and running last after the first lap, he finished P13 and ahead of Yuki.
Yeah.
I think he did. I think it was like 48 laps on mediums, which was the longest stint by far of anyone for the entire race, which was insane. Like I think
I
the
didn't
next
even notice
closest,
that.
yeah, no, well, I mean, yeah, they really didn't talk about him too much on the broadcast,
No.
just besides like qualifying the Senate. Oh, he did better than Yuki,
Yeah.
but it was pretty impressive that he managed to do that. And he was also the one who told the team, "We have pace, box me so I can get in clean air," and that's what they did, and it really
Yeah.
paid off. I
Yeah.
think just that shows his experience. And I think that's going to help AlphaTauri a lot this season.
Agreed.
But yeah,
Excited to
really,
see him back on the grid.
really
Excited
happy to
to
see
see
him
what he
back on the
brings.
grid. And he seems to have found his mojo a little bit, even though they're in a slow car. But beating Yuki first race back is no mean feat.
No, by no means. I think he's got it back. I think the break for him was honestly the best thing that could have happened to him.
Yep,
I
definitely.
just don't think him and McLaren really meshed that well. I think goes beyond our knowledge as much as we want to speculate, but I'm really
Yep.
happy to see that he's happy and we have the personality of the season back.
Yep.
Honey Badger's
Side
back.
side note: Lando and Danny Rick flew out together to the
Yes.
race, which was amazing to see. So happy to
Uh,
see them back together.
it literally is like my favorite thing to see them all together hanging out when it's
Yep.
not like race weekend or just like on the side.
Yeah, it's
So
funny
amazing.
because like when Danny Rick first joined McLaren, like they like talk and they're like, "Oh, we don't really have anything in common." And then like
Now
by the
he's
time
wearing Enchante merch.
yeah, and they're going to parties together and stuff and flying to the races together, and like by the time Danny and Rick left, like they were really good friends. So yeah, just happy to see them back together and him specifically back on the grid and doing well.
Yeah, go Danny Rick. Let's see how he goes this season. And maybe, I think speculation is saying that he's hoping for Checo's seat in 2025 or 2024?
Yeah, so Checo
25.
is contracted until the end of 2024, but it's
Yeah,
Red Bull, so if Checo
yeah.
has a shit second half of the season, they could boot him and Danny Rick could get the spot.
I
But
mean,
as of now, assuming they don't get rid of Checo, he's going for the 2025 seat.
yeah, that makes sense. I think Checo's definitely feeling the pressure, but as we saw in this past race, he's able to bring it back. So curious. I think the pressure's on, though.
Yeah,
A little
definitely.
bit more than it was before, so.
Yeah, I don't think Checo's feeling the pressure from Yuki or Nick DeVries, but I think with how public this comeback has been and him clearly saying he wants the Red Bull seat and
Yep.
Horner saying that, yeah, he told us he wants the Red Bull seat, it's definitely putting the pressure on Checo.
We shall see.
Even Max actually in one of the like the pre-race interviews said like, "Oh, I never actually I never wanted him to leave." Like
I
referring
know.
to Daniel Ricciardo.
Max is such a little G.
Yeah.
He knows what we want. He just doesn't express it as much. All right. Going on to the meme of the week. Want to start?
Sure. So my meme of the week is Checo-centric, the Checo cycle. So it's really funny. So at least this season, it's been Checo qualifies shit. He gets out in Q1 or Q2. And he's like, "Oh, I had a bad qualifying." And then, keep in mind, he's in the fastest car ever in F1.
Yeah.
Then, in the race, he passes all these slower cars and gets to the podium. And because he qualified poorly and passed all these cars that he should have been ahead to begin with, he gets driver of the day.
Yep.
Because that makes sense.
Yep.
And just rinse and repeat. And I think earlier in the season, I think he had like 3 driver of the day in a row because he kept doing this where he would just have a shit quality, pass lower cars, get a podium, driver of the day. Lando was actually in the media pit after the race, and like I guess they were showing it on a screen that he got driver of the day. And Lando looks, he's like, "What the hell did he get driver of the day for?" Like everyone knows it's like that's such like a joke way to get driver of the day.
I think as Formula One fans, we all have to unite and make sure that it doesn't continuously happen anymore. So,
yes,
Graham, I just
I
made
agree.
my meme of the week, which I see you looking at.
I just opened it up.
So, I obviously just screenshotted it, but...
This is a good one. I did see this one, and it was it was one of my potentials.
It's a good one. So, it's Alpine after turn 1. And it's a picture of Mick going with "done for the day" with a big smile on his face, me like showing people if they can ever see it. Right?
Yeah, that's truly been Alpine for the past 2 races.
The double DNF, just done for the day.
Yep, done for the day.
We're like, yay! We don't have to do anything anymore. That gave me a good giggle, but also I feel bad for Alpine because it really wasn't their fault. But
yeah, speaking of Alpine, just a side note, Laurent Rossi, who was the Alpine F1 CEO, basically got kicked off of his spot, and now he's doing like special projects. But I think that the Alpine board is a little bit upset with how it's been going this season for them, so they gave him the boot.
Define special projects.
Yeah, it's the place for rejected F1 bosses, I guess.
Okay, perfect. We're all doing special.
Your special
projects.
project is to figure out why you're such a bad boss.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, but earlier in the season, there were comments saying like this is unacceptable, and he was like, basically shitting on like the F1 team and like saying like we're better than this. And before this McLaren upgrade, I think they would have been happy with 5th place, but now they're looking like they're going to get 6th at best. So definitely not good for them.
They got to pick it up. Curious to see how the next race goes. Hopefully they can finish.
Yeah. So speaking of next race, we are going to Spa, and it is a sprint weekend. Wow. So
dun dun dun.
Yeah, and apparently there's rain in the forecast, so it might be a little bit of a exciting one. Hopefully, we'll see. Hopefully, we won't get a repeat of 2021 where there's actually no racing. That would not be fun.
Our predictions would go to shit.
Yeah. So, what are your predictions for Spa?
Okay. Well, I had to switch them up from yours, so whatever. Obviously, Max P1. I did put Checo P2 because it just makes sense.
Yeah, like he's got a little bit of confidence building up now.
It should make sense. Everything in me wants to put Charles P3, but it's just not happening. If it does, I'd be so happy to be wrong. but I actually put Oscar P3.
All right. You think he's going to get his
Feel
first podium?
I I hope so. I think he has the car. I think he could have last race had, the circumstances unfolded a tiny bit differently.
Yeah. And definitely
Um,
in Silverstone too. If that safety car hadn't come out,
exactly.
he 100% would have gotten a podium.
Exactly. So I feel like he'll be up there. I'm manifesting for him.
Okay. I like it. And what is your wild prediction?
I'm going to say there's a crash on lap 1.
All right. So are we talking like safety car crash, just any crash, or are we talking like crash cause safety car, or just any crash? Because like, are you
I
saying
feel
like
like you're
a
not going
wheel
to
to
take
wheel
any crash.
contact? I think it's got to be a
No, no.
crash with like
I'm going to,
someone
yeah.
DNFing.
I'd say safety car.
Okay, I'll take.
Which, like,
I'll give
yeah.
you a little. I'll give you a little bit here. So I'll say crash causing a DNF or a safety car. So like if what
Okay,
happens to
perfect.
Alpines happens again, like
Yeah,
there was no safety car, but they both DNF'd. I'll
right.
accept that.
Yeah, perfect. That's my
All
prediction.
right, I like it. I like it. We do need a
All
little
right,
bit of
what's your
excitement. It's been a while without a safety car.
I know, and I feel like
I
we're
mean,
we're kind of
We had
begging for that.
Silverstone, but that wasn't even like because of like a crash. We
Yeah.
need Nicholas Latifi back. We need Go Tiffy.
Take out Max. Anyway, continuing on. What are yours?
So we actually have the same for the first two spots. I went with
Yeah.
Max P1 and Checo P2. Max, obviously, he's going to win. Checo,
Yeah.
like I was saying, I think that he's got a little bit of confidence building. That was an okay-ish qualifying and a decent drive. So I think he's going to keep it going. I think he's going to finish P2. And then I put Lando P3, 3 podiums in a row. I think that the McLaren is Spa's similar to Silverstone in Austria. It's like more high speed, and they're like the best car in high speed, like right up there with Red Bull. So I think that Lando's going to get another podium, P3.
I won't argue with that. I think you could definitely have that right.
Yeah.
What's your crazy prediction?
So speaking of Daniel Ricciardo, my crazy prediction is that he is going to finish in the top 10 and get a point.
I don't think that's too crazy, but I will give that to you.
I think that if there's some sort of like crash, safety car, something crazy happens, his experience is going to come into play. They're going to do some different strategy from the other teams, and he might be able to fight for P10. Um,
I can see that.
and yeah, that's my crazy prediction. I'm willing it into existence, like you did with Checo crashing.
Yeah.
A couple or not getting into Q3 a couple races ago.
I know. I was so good at predicting those. So, wahahaha.
So we'll
We'll see
see
how it
if I
goes.
can either even you up on points or overtake you. We'll find out.
You might. You might. All
All
right.
right. Now, time for the best part of the podcast. Hinge pickup line of the week.
So these came, and I think they go hand in hand together, and they go hand in hand with the race. So this one's not that good.
Okay. So we're starting off with the bad one.
It's weird, but it's relevant. So,
Okay.
are you a shoey? Because I would drink you. And then, so that's weird. But then in
Okay.
parentheses, which where the relevance comes in, is
Mm-hmm.
please bring back Danny Rick. I can't live without him.
So that
So
must have
this was
been one
obviously sent.
from
Yeah,
before it was announced.
exactly. It was probably from like a while ago because I've had this for quite some time and
Mm-hmm.
I've been harvesting them. But Justin, here's an announcement to Justin. Your dream came true.
And there
um,
was a shoey actually. Lando and Oscar did
yeah,
shoeys after Silverstone.
yeah,
Not on the podium, but they did it after the race. So
yes.
shoeys and
Uh,
Daniel Ricciardo are back.
they are back. The pickup line overall, 1 out of 10. Because
Yeah.
why do you want to drink me?
Yeah, that's I don't really want to picture that. I don't think that really makes sense. That's definitely a 1 out of 10 for me as well.
Yeah, but this next one,
Okay.
it's a little,
This one
it's a
better
little
be a 10.
harsh. So hand in hand with the comeback of Daniel Ricciardo and the exit of Nick DeVries, this guy says, they call me Nick DeVries in the bedroom because I'm short, or it's short and underperforming.
Okay. Not a good pickup line because why would you want to be short and underperforming? But very relevant, and I love it.
I just think the humor came through on that one. Obviously, I don't know, it was just funny, and you know that he's a good sport because he makes fun of himself.
Yeah.
Honestly,
That's a
I'd give it. What would
for
you
the
rate it?
relevance and like that seems like one that's probably original. I'm gonna give it like a 6, but only because like it's not like it's a conversation starter, not like a good pickup line, if that makes sense. Which I don't know. I'm giving it a
That's
6.
fair. I would give it a 7 just because I thought
Okay.
it was really funny and original. And he just, you know, he has a sense of humor.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
like,
and
I'm
he
kind of
knows his
down
F1
for this.
stuff.
He does. And this was sent, like, way before there was even, like, rumors of Nick
Hmm.
getting kicked off. So,
So he saw the
you know, he really
underperformance
knew.
before everyone
Yes.
else did. That's some
Yes.
true F1 wheel knowledge right there.
Exactly. So, I would say 7 out of 10 for that one. We love the self degradation and keep it up. But yeah, I guess that concludes this week's episode.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you all for listening. Make sure to follow us on Spotify and Apple so you guys get updated with all of the podcast episodes as they come out. And make sure to check out our socials on TikTok and Instagram and Twitter as well. We have a Twitter account now. That's new.
tea. Tea and a thread account if you're into that.
Yeah, I think that's dead. I think that's dead.
Yeah, I think it died real quick. Anyway, thanks
Well,
guys, and that's gas.
that's gas. See you next week. Bye.
Bye.